There's a specific kind of silence that falls over a house when the people leave for the last time. It is heavy. It settles like dust on the tables and the chairs. Now imagine that silence stretching across an entire village. Imagine walking into a cabin today, 70 years later, and finding a rusty coffee pot still sitting on a wood stove. Imagine seeing a child's doll dropped in the tall grass, bleached white by the sun. In the middle of the 20th century, a thriving community on the edge of the chaotic Alaskan wild didn't just fade away. It didn't run out of gold. It didn't burn down. It was evacuated. The people fled into the cold ocean because the land behind them had turned against them. They left everything they owned to the rot and the rain. But why? Most ghost towns have a sad story. This one has a violent one. To understand the fear, you have to understand the place. The village was Portlock. It sat on the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. If you look at it on a map, it looks like the end of the world. To the people who lived there in the 1940s, it was paradise. The water was teeming with salmon, the cannery was loud and busy, the money was good. It was a mix of cultures. Tough Russian settlers and skilled native Aleuts lived side by side. These were not people who scared easily. They knew how to survive blizzards. They knew how to handle bears. They were the top of the food chain, or so they thought. The trouble didn't start with a roar. It started with a quiet unease. The year was 1949. The men who worked the timber and the traps started coming home early. They said the woods felt different. They said the hair on their arms stood up when they walked near the tree line. It was the feeling of being hunted. Then, the feeling turned into reality. Men went into the high country to hunt sheep and never came down. At first, the town assumed it was the terrain, loose rocks, sudden falls. But when the search parties went out, they found things that didn't make sense. They found footprints, huge prints, shaped like a man's, but deep enough to sink into hard earth. They found rifles lying on the moss, fully loaded. A man doesn't drop his gun unless he is taken by surprise. Then came the bodies, or what was left of them. These weren't bear attacks. Bears are messy scavengers. This was something else. The victims had been torn apart with a precise, terrifying strength. One body was found dismembered, the pieces scattered across a creek bed as if to send a message. The message was clear. Leave. The locals whispered a word from the old stories, Nantinak. It translates roughly to, the big man. But this wasn't a man. Survivors described a hairy giant, a shadow that moved too fast. It didn't just kill, it stalked. It came down from the hills and started testing the village. Workers at the cannery would hear wood snapping just beyond the lights. Mothers forbade their children from playing in the yard. The safety of the home was violated. One night, a man heard his heavy equipment being tossed around outside. These were machines that weighed hundreds of pounds. Whatever was out there was tossing them like toys. The dogs were the worst part. Alaskan dogs are bred to fight. They will charge a grizzly bear without hesitation. But in Portlock, the dogs broke. They whined. They shook. They tried to dig through the floorboards to hide. That is when the people knew. You can fight a bear. You can shoot a wolf. But you cannot fight a nightmare. The turning point was quiet, but final. It wasn't a massacre in the streets. It was the realization that they were trapped. The creature was getting bolder. It was seen on the edge of the beach. It was screaming at them from the darkness. The postmaster, usually the anchor of the town, decided he couldn't do it anymore. When the post office closes in a remote Alaskan town, the town is dead. It is the severing of the last vein connecting them to the world. The panic set in. It was a sunny day when they left, but the mood was pitch black. Boats lined up at the dock. There was no time to pack furniture. There was no time to board up the windows properly. People grabbed photos, Bibles, and clothes. They left the dishes in the sink. They crowded onto the fishing vessels, looking over their shoulders. They expected the Nantinak to come charging out of the spruce trees to stop them. They pushed off the dock and the engines roared to life. As the distance grew between the boats and the shore, a heavy silence fell over the water. They watched their homes get smaller. They watched the smoke stop rising from the chimneys. They surrendered the town to the thing in the woods. And just like that, Portlock was gone. For decades, the town sat there, perfectly preserved in its terror. The winters came and crushed the roofs. The salt air rusted the cannery machinery into orange skeletons. The forest slowly crept back in, swallowing the paths and the porches. It became a taboo place. Fishermen would drift nearby, but they wouldn't land. They said the air felt heavy there. They said the birds didn't fly over the ruins. Nature has reclaimed the wood and the metal. But the story refuses to rot. Recently, the grandchildren of those who fled have talked about returning. They talk about rebuilding. But those who have set foot on that beach say the same thing. You are being watched. The Nantinak might be a legend. It might be a mass hallucination caused by isolation. Or it might be something real, something that claimed a territory and has held it for 70 years. The ruins of Portlock are still there today. They are a monument to the one time humanity admitted defeat. We usually win. We usually pave over the wild. But in that small corner of Alaska, we ran away. If you ever find yourself sailing the cold waters of the Kenai, look for the pilings of the old dock. Look at the dense green wall of trees behind it. It looks beautiful. But ask yourself one question. Why hasn't anyone gone back?